Simon, thanks so much for making the time to chat today.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Eric. Really appreciate the invitation and happy to speak with you anytime.
Yeah. Well, you and I think, have kept in really good touch post graduation, but I know that, we had a graduating class of almost 300 people, and probably not everyone knows your story as well as I do. And so I'd love for you to maybe start and tell us, what has your life been like since graduation?
That's a great question. 2009 was a heady time for us all. I think we can all remember the sort of pressures of the financial crisis back then. It was kind of an intense moment. And yeah, I guess when I was a senior, I thought I would be some sort of legislative staffer.
Hmm.
And I think I had like a job interview for some state assemblyman in like West Hollywood, somewhere on the west side of LA. And I um, had an interview for that, and I left from Claremont in my car like 2 hours before the interview started, and I still ended up being like 20 minutes late,
At LA
and
traffic.
didn't get the job, and didn't get any other legislative jobs. So I thought I was going to be like a gov jock with getting a legislative job, but I didn't get one. And so I decided to lean into Plato.
Hmm.
And yeah, I took an intensive ancient Greek course at Berkeley,
Hmm.
which was really eye-opening and a great moment, and really fun to learn ancient Greek. And then through that class, surprisingly enough, I did in fact get a political job, and I
Hmm.
worked in the Bay Area for a year as a opposition researcher. Uh, and I also, in that time, applied for philosophy grad school, and yeah, I ended up getting into Princeton for grad school. And so then, after I lived in the Bay Area, which is a very happy time, and many CMCers and I lived there at the same time, and it was really fun. I moved to Princeton, New Jersey, and I was there for 7 years, from 2010 to 2017.
Wow.
Uh, First as a PhD student, then briefly as a postdoc. And yeah, after many years of trying to find an academic job, I finally did. And so I have an academic job at Oxford here, and I've been here here in Oxford since 2017. So I've lived in the UK for 7 years now
That's
as
amazing.
an ancient philosophy academic, as an ancient philosophy professor.
That is incredible. And I find, because Claremont obviously skews sort of like Gov Econ, and you yourself were sort of looking to get into Gov stuff post graduation, it's so cool that here you are as a professor of ancient Greek philosophy in Oxford, right? But there's so many things like that got you there that I'd love for you to maybe double click on. I don't know much about philosophy grad school. When you applied, is this
Mm.
something that you have to like choose a specialty? Like you say, hey, I'm going to be the ancient Greek guy, or is it sort of like a, you know, application at large?
Yeah, it's definitely different from applying to undergrad. I think in undergrad you're just trying to show off your general um, character traits and say the sort of exciting things you've done and sort of present a well-rounded um, depiction of yourself. But yeah, in grad school it's very much specialized. So yeah, you apply with a view to working on a specific topic, and even with particular professors at particular
Mm.
departments. Um, and yeah, so you definitely apply with a view to working on a certain sort of a topic in philosophy.
And I'm assuming that your topic was something Plato related, just because you made mention of that for that intensive course.
Yes. I wrote my undergrad thesis on Plato, and I thought that I was going to keep working on Plato, and I did for many years. And yeah, I applied to grad school intending to work more on Plato. Um, and in the course of grad school, my interest kind of shifted. I mean, I'm still
Mm.
really interested in Plato, of course, he's the best. But did a lot of Aristotle, and then also was introduced to the Hellenistic philosophers, so
Mm.
Stoics, Epicureans, and Pyrrhonian skeptics. And now most of my research is on the Stoics, actually, but also to some extent on Plato as well.
What, look, I was a PPE major, and so like I, dabble in philosophy, if you will.
Hmm.
And I find that like with our peers, people sort of gravitate towards certain, philosophers or types of philosophy, if you will, fields in
Hmm.
philosophy more so than others. What drew your
Hmm.
interest to the Stoics?
Hmm. Well, what I like about them is that you may have heard about them like sort of pop stoicism, like tech bros are very much into the Stoics, and you can see like even if you go to like an airport bookstore, there's lots of Stoic books and like the Stoic way, and you know overcome the obstacle, or so it's these sort of alpha
Yeah.
male, masculine sort of titles, and it's like I think a lot of people are attracted to it because, like, they want to pretend that they're Marcus Aurelius or whatever, the famous emperor slash Stoic philosopher. But beneath that sort of popular appearance of Stoic philosophy, it's actually it's quite more complicated when when you delve into it. And often people don't know that Stoic philosophy is not just about ethics; it's also about logic. So
Mm,
a theory of you sort of how to argue what constitutes a valid argument or an invalid argument, and
mm,
it also talks quite a bit about what we would call metaphysics. So sort of
mm,
the theory of reality and what exists, and sort of the different grades of being, the different types of things that exist, the fundamental beings, the less fundamental beings. They have worked out views on all these topics. And what's really exciting for me is that how these different areas of Stoic philosophy are integrated in a systematic way. And so when they're arguing for a view in logic, they might draw on their ethical thought, if they're and vice versa. If they're making a point about an ethical issue, they might rely on resources from logic or metaphysics. So it's a very integrated system. And
cool.
they described their philosophy as itself a systema, as a system.
Ah,
That's their own metaphor for um, how the various parts of their theory interrelate. And I find that sort of way of doing philosophy and that ambition to construct not just a sort of a standalone ethical theory, but an ethical theory, a logical theory, and a metaphysical theory, very inspiring.
yeah, a true system. Um, it's fascinating to hear how your interests have changed over time. I remember you working really hard on your thesis in undergrad, and and there's um so much to be say proud about your CV, including I have a copy of your most recent book,
Oh,
The
thank you.
Stoic
My only
Eros, which everyone should go out to bookstores and buy today. It's also available on Amazon.
book.
Um, but I'd love maybe, like, look, uh, some of the philosophy classes at Claremont were my favorite. Tell me just briefly about this book and like what a layperson should know about your most recent published work.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, well, this book, it's a short book. It's only about 80 pages. Um, and it's about so often people think of Stoics as very austere. In
Mm,
fact, our word Stoic in English means someone who, doesn't really get perturbed or discombobulated by changes in fortune, sort of stoically persists despite all these changes in fortune. And to some extent, that reflects the actual ancient Stoics view. So they held the view that um, the happy life, the best life, is one which is free of passion, and they
huh.
put forward apatheia, freedom from passion,
Huh.
as the mark of the happy life.
Huh.
And you might think that's a crazy view. Aren't emotions really important to our lives? Surely, and moreover,
This is almost like counter tech bro culture too, because they're all about like follow your passion, dude, or whatever.
yeah, yeah, there's another just analogy there,
Yeah.
right
Yeah.
there. Yeah, and you might think, in addition to emotions being important for a happy life, you might also think it's impossible to not feel them. And
Mm,
so the Stoic thesis is sort of considered very paradoxical and difficult, and maybe some people might just think obviously false. And so really what the book is about is despite their commitment to apatheia, freedom from passion, they also um, made put an important emphasis on eros, erotic love.
mm,
So that's the sort of central puzzle of the book, is like how can they put forward the ideal of freedom from passions, apatheia, and also think
yeah.
that eros is so important because they think that the wise, happy person, in fact, engages in erotic love and is a erotikos, is an erotic lover himself.
Yeah.
or herself. So that's the central puzzle of the book: is how is their endorsement of erotic love in the life of the sage compatible with apatheia, freedom from passion?
And did you feel like you came to an answer on that?
Yes, yes. Well, you're gonna have to read the book.
Yeah, of course.
But
I'm, I'm halfway through. I just haven't gotten there yet.
well, it's a very dense book, it must be said. I didn't really. I sort of wrote it for like the four other people who work on this topic, sadly.
Sure, sure.
But you can edit. But that might not be the best thing to say. But yeah,
Okay.
like uh, it's definitely an interesting question, and I think yeah, what they want to say is that there's different types of eros, different types of erotic love, and so the erotic love that most of us ordinary people feel is in fact a passion, and hence unstable, and ultimately resting on some sort of fragile cognitive foundation.
Mm,
So, for example, they give the example of Medea. So Medea was this ancient archetype. She was in Euripides' play called Medea,
mm,
and she's mostly known for killing her children to take revenge on her husband Jason. So her husband Jason spurned her, and
mm,
as a way of taking revenge, she murdered their children. And you might think that Eros has something to do with that.
yeah.
You might think that Medea's emotional response on that occasion was something to do with her erotic bond with Jason.
Mm,
And what the Stoics want to say is that that's, even though that seems more extreme than our ordinary types of erotic love, the sort of friends with benefits or whatever, they're just as insane. And so
mm,
they think that the only way you could um, pursue Eros in a non-insane way is if you had the full knowledge that constitutes virtue, which is restricted to the wise person.
yeah.
And so then the question is, well, what does Eros look like for that knowledgeable, virtuous person? And and the sort of issue I try to tackle in the book is, does that really even count as any sort of love at all? I mean, is it just
Mm,
so far removed from our ordinary concept of love that it doesn't even deserve the name? And
mm,
that's in fact what some ancient critics of Stoic Eros argued. So
mm,
Plutarch, he's a critic of Stoic Eros, and he
mm,
wants to say that um, what you're talking about isn't Eros at all.
mm,
In when you're talking about the sort of wise Eros, it's not really anything answering to our ordinary concept of love.
mm. Fascinating stuff. Um, um, I think it's so cool. Like, I love sort of bragging that you are one of my closest friends because
Hmm.
it's just so cool to say that I have a tenured professor of ancient Greek philosophy at Brasenose College in Oxford. But I
Oh,
also know that, like, between just because you and I have kept in really good touch,
hmm.
between graduation and today, you've had it's not all been roses, right? And I think that's probably true for everybody.
Yes.
Would you be open and willing to share some of the, like, sort of, I don't want to say CV of failures, but some, like, challenges you've had since graduation?
Yeah, well, I think that's really good. I'm glad you mentioned that CV of failures. So I think, yeah, that refers to this philosopher. Um, he thought that, uh, by philosopher I mean an academic today.
Yeah,
He was thought it was really useful because we often put forward just our successes in our public persona, like on our
yeah,
LinkedIn page,
yeah,
or we always put just the things we did well. But how much more instructive is it to have the opposite idea, a CV of failures? So imagine if you
right,
posted on your public LinkedIn all the things you failed to do or
yeah,
got rejected from.
yeah,
And I think that's really important because, it's not all roses, as you were saying, Eric. Totally true. And yeah, I think academic life is full of rejection. It's in
yeah,
fact one of the most rejection riddled jobs you can have. So we're getting rejected for things all the time. And it's very competitive.
yeah,
And we're always sort of up against people constantly being judged and evaluated by our peers and our superiors.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I've gotten rejected from so many things. I mean, every sort of publication goes through multiple forms of rejection, one way or
mm,
another. And but ultimately, that's part of making it better. And
right,
I also try to think that, yeah, like a Stoic doctrine would be, dealing with failures and setbacks is actually part of being virtuous, and you got to like
Yes.
summon the inner strength to get past it.
Right, right. I'm so grateful for you having shared that because I think that like you're right. People share these updates on Facebook or LinkedIn, and
Hmm.
you think, "Oh my God, they're doing so well," and like they are doing
Yeah,
well, and I'm so proud of where you are, and I think that you're doing amazing things. But I know that it's like getting rejected time and time again from
yeah,
publications can be really hard. And we got to celebrate the wins then when we have a book come out or get something published or what have you.
yes,
Yeah,
totally. Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I mean it's a fight out there, and it's just part of life, I think. And
yeah,
that's why I think the Stoic views have helped me over the years is to
yeah,
sort of reconceptualize those setbacks. Maybe
yeah,
there's something you can like learn from them or grow from them. And maybe that might sound a bit glib,
yeah.
like, oh yeah, just look for the silver linings all the time. And it
Right,
can be hard, and
right,
sort of you might think like a juvenile sort of naive view, but
right.
nonetheless, I've tried to learn the most I can from it.
I think it's so cool to hear about your life as an academic, and
Mm,
no doubt that there's many people from our class at Claremont who chose like an academic life. But you're one
mhm.
of the few people, I think, um, or who also are living the expat life.
Right.
I'd love for you to talk. What's it like living in Oxford? What's it like living abroad? How are you enjoying expat life? Tell me everything about that.
Yeah, it's very hard. I never thought I would be an expat.
Yeah,
Um, it's something I definitely like um, stumbled into, as it were, um, because yeah, this is like the place where I got a job, and
yeah,
so it was either give up my academic dreams or move here, and I did, and it's been
yeah,
great, and I'm really lucky to live here. I think. Um, it's Oxford is a very, in some ways, an old-fashioned place, and it's a very different undergrad institution from CMC, but there are still some important commonalities, and I think that's just part of the nature of undergraduate education is that it's just like a very interesting formative time of life.
yeah,
And one thing I really like about it is, yeah, like getting able to um, help and teach these people, young adults. And I think that's
yeah,
actually one of the best parts of academic life is to sort of
yeah,
give them guidance at a very important formative moment. Um, but yeah, I think British life is not that different from US life. I mean, it's a as they say, like two peoples divided by a common language.
yeah,
That's definitely true. I mean, there's definitely so many little turns of phrase I've had to master over the years. But really, yeah, I mean, it's uh, it's a fun place. It's very I live in Oxford. I also spend a lot of time in London, and very nice places both. And
yeah.
yeah, I mean, like I also like being an expat here. I mean, we're not that exotic. There's a bunch of Americans here anyway. So it's not like we're like totally unheard of, uncontacted tribes. But I do think, yeah, I mean, of all the places to be an expat, it's probably maybe one of the easiest. Maybe Canada might be easier.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, it's not too bad. And there's lots of flights. I can fly
Yeah,
home quite a bit. I see a
yeah.
lot of American friends, for example, Eric, and people are always coming through. So
I visited you. Yeah, it was great. It was really great.
yes, and I think it's just so much fun. A big hope. I mean, yeah, I think people naturally think that I'm maybe a bit like ditzy, but that's fine. I like that.
I don't think anyone thinks that about you, Simon. I'd be shocked. I'd be very shocked. You're, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong. So you're at Brasenose, which is also incidentally, and for the audience, where Saltburn was filmed,
Mm,
if I
yes.
recall correctly. So for those of you that have seen the movie, you know where Simon sort of lives and works. I
Mm,
think Brasenose was founded in 1509. Is that right?
yes, that's right.
This is an institution then that is over 500 years old. Claremont,
Mhm.
when we went, I think was like 60 years old, right? Or
Yeah,
maybe 70 years old. I don't
yeah, yeah.
remember. Um, Give me a sense of some of the traditions that are at Brasenose and like what sort of life would be like for a student there, and what goes on and what they can look forward to.
Yes. So yeah. So Oxford is kind of like the five C's in
Mm.
that there's a there's
Consortium.
there's a Oxford is composed out of 30-ish colleges. So whereas we had the five C's, they have like 35.
Yeah.
And just like in Claremont, there are varying sizes and varying sort of student bodies and varying points of emphasis. Maybe not quite as dramatic as, Harvey Mudd versus Pincer, but there are slightly, each college has slightly different focuses. Um, and there's also the sort of university, which lies above all the colleges. And
Mm.
that's Oxford itself. But then beneath
Mm.
that, there's all these colleges where the undergrads and grads live and study. Um, it's fun, yeah. No, it's a very intimate place, much like CMC. Like so, my college, Brasenose, as Eric mentioned, is like maybe like 300, 400 undergrads in total.
Oh wow, that's tiny.
So it's very small,
Yeah.
and it's about the size of mid quad
Oh my God,
from
wow.
CMC.
Also great reference. I know the exact square footage now.
And so it's very intimate. So you get to see, everyone sort of lives very closely together, and it's a very tight knit community, and it's just it's very interesting for that reason. Um, and it's definitely a community where sort of if something bad happens or something good happens, everyone is sort of feeling it.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, in terms of traditions, yeah, it's very weird. Like they dress up all the time in these weird clothes to take their exams. All the teaching is done sort of one on one, in what they
So it's
call
like
tutorials.
tutorials. Yeah.
Yes, and so I'm a tutor, so I give
Ah.
tutorials. Um, and yeah, they eat in a big hall, much like Collins, slightly older, but and not as good food. I will
Mm.
definitely hasten
That's too
to
bad.
add. But yeah, it's very. I mean, I think yeah, that's what I was saying earlier. Like college life is in some ways very similar wherever it's going on.
Well, I'm glad to hear then that college life hasn't changed too much because I can't help but feel that from 2005 to 2009 were the glory years of all college life, and you would just be so lucky to be any part of class of 2009.
Agreed.
Um, you know, Speaking of 2009, I'd like to like go back and think about
Mm,
our time at college and maybe have you, reflect about some things.
mm,
Um,
right. We're happy to.
Tell me, like, share some of your favorite memories from when we were at college.
Oh wow. Well, I think it goes back to when we were freshmen, Eric, and we were living in Benson, and there was a trip being discussed to go to Burbank, was it, or wherever Price is Right was filmed.
That's
We're going
right,
to go to the
Burbank.
live studio audience of The Price is Right, hosted by Bob Barker. And yeah, I
Yes.
think it was our second semester there, maybe like, yeah, like uh,
I
somewhere.
actually think it was March. I think it was like, almost this time, God, 18 years ago?
Oh gosh,
That's
I
terrifying.
uh, I need to lie down after that. But no, yeah, like it was great, I was thinking, it's like I remember we were talking, you and I, about, and I was like a little bit on the fence. I was like, oh yeah, I gotta do this or that. And you said, no, you gotta go. You're gonna regret it if you don't. How many times are you gonna do this in your life? And which is of course 100% true and exactly what I needed to hear. And I was like, yeah, hell yeah, we're doing this. And so we like piled into like the minivan and we drove down into the studio,
Yeah.
and there was a bunch of people in the line to get into the studio, and I think Kanisha was in front of me, and I think I was like, "Oh, damn, they're definitely going to pick her," because we were being sort of interviewed very briefly
Yeah.
by the producer, and I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh my God, they're definitely going to pick Kanisha." And then we got inside, and they called me, and I was like, "Oh my God!" And you can see, from
Simon Shogry, come on down.
and it was definitely a high point of my life to be able
Yeah.
to compete as a contestant on The Price is Right.
If I recall correctly, you were the first group to come down and you were the first winner. So you bid correctly on the first item.
That's right.
What did you remind me what you won?
Well, I won a greenhouse of
Oh,
all
hell yeah.
things, a recliner, which still sits in my parents' living room in Albuquerque, and finally, I won a Dell desktop computer.
Amazing.
Yeah,
How useful. Dude, you
yeah.
got a
Oh,
Dell.
dude, I got a Dell in the best way possible, and it was about when that ad was at its peak. But yeah, no, it's so much fun.
Yeah, that was fun. That was a really great time. I remember that vividly, and actually remember there was some game where it was like pick one price or the other, and I remember either telling you to switch or telling you to stay, and you did the opposite, and that's why you won. And I'm so glad you didn't listen to me. Um,
Well, it was a total bedlam in there,
yeah,
and,
right, right,
uh and, but I appreciate the support.
yeah. Favorite switching gears, coming back to the questions. Tell me your
Mm.
favorite CMC class.
Well, I think it'd have to be, Intro to Ancient Philosophy,
Mm,
which I took only as a distribution requirement as a philosophy major, but it ended up
mm,
being totally life-changing,
right, right.
as I'm now an ancient philosophy professor, so I think I'd have to go with that one, and it was
Yeah,
just so much fun, and, it was really, close-knit,
yeah,
really good conversations,
yeah,
and I remember just being friends. I remember feeling like a deep, bond with, like, there's maybe, like, 9 or 10 of us, and,
yeah,
we were just sitting around talking about Plato and Aristotle, and I just thought that was so much fun, and I
yeah.
really, really enjoyed that class.
I think that something that Claremont does so well is they really foster your curiosity so well. And so, like, I've
Mm,
obviously kept in really good touch with you, but I know
mhm,
that for so many people, there's been some seminal class that, to your point, changed
mm,
their life. Like
mhm,
they took an ancient Greek philosophy class or an ancient philosophy class and they
mhm,
became a professor in philosophy, or maybe they took an
mhm,
econ class and now they're
mhm.
getting an econ PhD, or maybe they're in a hedge fund, right?
Right.
Um, and I think that, it's partially that we were just in a formative time in our lives. But I also think that Claremont just did such a good job of fostering that within us,
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, favorite CMC professor?
Oh, I'd have to say, oof, that's a tough one.
I'll
Um
allow you to name multiple people in case you're.
Well, yeah, I really like the philosophers were really great. So, I mean, obviously, I'm sort of a broken record at this point, but yeah, I think we both took a class from Professor Racy. I think
Phenomenal.
he was the first philosophy professor
Yeah,
I had. I think we both took intro philosophy from
that's
him,
right. That's right.
um, and it was great. I mean, I was just like the way he was able to communicate what philosophers do was really memorable, and I still use that in my own intros to philosophy. And I think one thing he said was, people think that philosophy is like, I
Yeah,
think he said like, I think he had this anecdote where he's like, or urban myth, where it's like,
yeah.
philosophy is like they give you a test, and the question is, what's the meaning of life? And the student wrote nothing and got an A. He's like, that's totally not what it is. And I thought that was so much funny because I think he was really great how he sort of started with the sort of preconceptions we might have had and just like
Yeah.
slowly overturn them and initiate us into this very different analytical enterprise. And I really, really think he did a great job introducing me to philosophy. And ditto with,
He.
sorry, go
Yeah.
ahead.
No, please keep going.
No, I was just going to say, and then ditto with Professor Obdržalik. She really did a great job introducing me to ancient philosophy, and yeah, we're still in touch from time to time. And so yeah,
Oh, that's great.
I just think these there's really like passionate professors who are really good scholars, but also yeah, really good teachers.
I know that you're really close with Professor Oberjalik and the
Mm,
impact she's had in your life.
mm,
Professor Racy, just to come back to him for a second,
mm.
like,
Yeah.
he taught a class that truly changed my life because
Hmm.
and I'd say the way that he taught it too, he obviously didn't teach you what to think. He just taught you how to think. And
Right.
so for the first 6 weeks, it was these like logic packets. And I still come back to some of that stuff that he did. And,
Yes.
he, I know that for so many people, the way that he taught and what he taught truly changed their life and turned them on to philosophy. I'll just
Yeah.
mention two things briefly. One, to your point of him talking about, what is philosophy, I remember him analogizing it to say that most people think that philosophy is like literature and like you have to
Hmm.
memorize characters and people and things. And it's actually a lot more like math
Yeah.
and a science. And I
Right.
saw that in his class. And
Yeah.
then the other thing that he did, and I think this is such a testament to him and a testament to Claremont for allowing him to do his magic, is, when you would hand in a paper,
Hmm.
he would give voice notes over your paper so that you could actually improve your thinking and you could hear that feedback. And that is just so unbelievable. And the idea that, you know, an institution would have a professor bend over backwards to give all of the students in a class such dedicated feedback Racy is in my pantheon of greatest professors of all time, and no surprise that he's in yours as well.
Yeah, I do remember those voice notes. I don't even think we called them voice notes back then. It was just like
No, God, yeah.
it's like feedback dot wave. And we like I remember playing it on my iTunes next to
Yes,
like the 30-second samples.
right,
Yeah, it
right.
was very, very I thought it was extremely technologically advanced.
Oh my God,
Um,
totally.
and I just
Yeah,
thought I also just felt so like humbled that he like spent so much time reading my stupid little paper. Um,
totally, totally. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So shout out to Professor Racy. You changed our lives, and I can't thank you enough for that.
it is really really a model of detailed feedback and taking young people seriously and giving them a chance to hone their skills.
Totally, totally. Okay, so some fun stuff. Favorite
Hmm.
CMC party?
Ooh, oh boy. Uh, I do. I think I really liked what we did in senior week when we were in San Diego. Many fun times there. But in terms of uh earlier moments, I always looked forward to the foam party.
Ah,
I don't know how many like little uh flip flops I lost in the suds there. Um, don't want to think about that too much, but no, yeah, it was so much fun, and I really enjoyed TNCs as with you,
oh,
man.
of
I
course.
think that was just so much fun, and there's really too many to count.
Yeah.
Uh, but those were definitely some high points.
Seeing as this
What about you?
is,
I mean, what would be yours?
I think that my favorite party, uh, agree. There were so many great ones. Like TNC was just such a great, to me, stand up thing. It was like Thursday, you're going to see
Hmm.
all your friends, just like something to look forward to.
Yeah.
Hosted by a dorm, you always felt welcomed, into the dorm. It was like lovely. 601 was my favorite
Oh,
because
right. Yes.
because
Yes.
it was the start of the year. It was warm out. Southern California always kind of warm, but sometimes at night we're like sort of in a desert. It gets a little chilly,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
just to know that it was like light out late, sun's shining, everyone's back on campus. That to me was
Hmm.
like just my all-time favorite. But I do also have fond memories of our senior week and maybe even a helicopter coming in and showing an appearance.
Yes. Yes. That's what I was also remembering.
Yes. Um Seeing as this is about a reunion, who do you keep in touch with? Who would you love to give a shout out to? Talk to me about that.
Oh, wow. Well, yeah, I love keeping in touch with you, Eric. That's been so much fun over the years. Nico Rattazzi and John Sloat and others that were there in the Bay Area in 2009, 2010. That was a really fun moment. Um, I would love to hear more from Nathan Barrymore and play some video games with him sometime. And of course, Peter McGaw and I
Oh,
often often exchange notes on Nintendo games.
Maga, that's amazing. That's amazing. Maga's in Boston with me now, and so I
Mm.
see him from time to time, and can confirm he is as awesome as ever.
Yeah, I also want to give a shout out to Kanisha and Elena, who I've hung out with many times on the Eastern Seaboard and had some many great hijinks with over the years. And yeah, they're always a good time.
Love that. Love that.
Excellent.
Um, okay, we're coming up on time. I have one last question before I let you go, and this is to spur, hopefully, connections for people reaching out to you. But
Mm.
finish this sentence for me. Someone should slide into my DMs to chat about.
Mm. Interesting. Um, Stoic vibes.
Love it. Stoic vibe.
Or that means either vibes or Stoics.
Perhaps that means then if someone's going through a hard time and could use some inspiration, you should be
Precisely.
their person that they
Yes,
should reach out to. Well, awesome.
I agree
Um,
100%. And I also want to mention old Sarah Robertson,
oh, of course. We
my
would be remiss.
my creative partner
Of
on
course.
so many different projects. And
Of
yeah,
course.
really miss you.
Well, Simon, I appreciate your time so
Hmm.
much today. People should reach out to you to talk about some Stoic vibes, talk to you
Hmm.
about expat life, ancient Greek philosophy. Loved having you on here, and thanks so much for making the time.
My pleasure, Eric. Anytime.
Cool. Take care.